The gunshot cracked the suburban afternoon like thunder from a clear sky. One moment, 12-year-old Sophia Hayes was walking her German shepherd, Max, along the sun-dappled sidewalk of Oakridge Drive. The next, her world exploded into chaos. Max. The girl's scream tore through the air, raw and primal, as the magnificent animal crumpled to the pavement. Blood bloomed across his silver-tipped coat, spreading with terrifying speed. Sophia dropped to her knees, small hands desperately pressing against the wound, her dark eyes wide with disbelief and horror. Officer Miller stood with his service weapon still extended, a thin wisp of smoke curling from the barrel. His partner, Officer Callaway, placed a restraining hand on the sobbing child's shoulder. The dog was aggressive, he stated flatly, ignoring her anguished protests. Neither officer noticed the elderly woman watching from her porch, already dialing a number that would reach halfway across the world to a classified location where Commander Michael Hayes, the most lethal operative in Delta Force history, would receive the news that would set in motion their destruction. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Sophia Hayes had known grief far too intimately for a 12-year-old child. 2 years ago, cancer had stolen her mother, Eleanor, leaving a void in their family that seemed impossible to fill. A bright student with a passion for astronomy and a collection of colorful notebooks filled with observations about the night sky, Sophia had retreated into silence after her mother's passing. Her warm brown eyes, so like her mother's, had dimmed, and her infectious laugh had become a distant memory. The Hayes family had recently moved to Oakridge, an affluent suburb predominantly populated by white families. Their impressive colonial home, with its well-maintained lawn and wraparound porch, had been Eleanor's dream, a dream she never lived to see fulfilled. Sophia navigated this new environment with the careful watchfulness of a child who understood, even at her tender age, that some places viewed her presence as an intrusion. Commander Michael Hayes carried his elite military status like an invisible shield. At 38, he had served in the most dangerous corners of the world as one of Delta Force's most decorated operatives. His missions remained classified, his medals locked away in a safe rather than displayed. 6'2", with broad shoulders and a disciplined physique, Michael moved with the contained power of someone who knew exactly how lethal he could be. Despite his imposing presence, his voice remained gentle when speaking to his daughter, and his hands, capable of extraordinary violence when necessary, were infinitely tender when brushing Sophia's hair. Widowhood and single parenthood had carved new lines around his eyes. His extended deployments weighed heavily on him, each separation from Sophia a fresh wound, but he believed in the work he did protecting his country. Max had been Michael's gift to Sophia after Eleanor's funeral, a silver-tipped German shepherd with intelligent eyes and unwavering loyalty. Initially trained as a military service dog before being redirected to become a companion animal, Max understood commands in 4 languages and could sense Sophia's nightmares before they fully manifested. He slept at the foot of her bed every night, a warm, protective presence when Michael was deployed. For Sophia, Max bridged the impossible gap between life before and after her mother's death. When words failed her, Max's steady presence communicated what therapy couldn't reach: unconditional love and security in a world that had proven itself heartbreakingly unpredictable. In Max's company, Sophia had slowly begun to speak again, to smile occasionally, to exist beyond her grief. The late September afternoon wrapped Oakridge in golden light as Sophia clipped Max's leash to his collar. Michael had been deployed for 3 weeks now, one of the shorter missions he'd promised, and their daily walks had become Sophia's anchor, a ritual that kept her connected to the rhythms of ordinary life while her father was away. Today she wore her NASA t-shirt, a gift from her father who understood her dreams of someday working in mission control. Max stood patiently as she double-checked his collar, his tail sweeping gentle arcs across the hardwood floor. "We'll be back before dinner, Aunt Jasmine," Sophia called. Her aunt, absorbed in legal briefs at the kitchen table, looked up and smiled. Jasmine stayed with Sophia during Michael's deployments, her own apartment just 20 minutes away. "Stay on the main paths," Jasmine reminded her, "and be back before 5. I'm making your favorite pasta." Outside, the neighborhood gleamed with privileged manicured lawns, luxury vehicles in circular driveways, children's toys that cost more than some people's monthly rent. The Hayes house, while comfortable, was modest by Oakridge standards. Sophia had already learned which neighbors smiled at her and which averted their eyes, which houses Max should give wide berth to, and which elderly residents appreciated his dignified demeanor. Mrs. Whitman, 82 and sharp as a tack, waved from her porch. "Looking handsome today, Max," she called. Sophia waved back, appreciating how the old woman always acknowledged Max first, understanding instinctively that the dog was Sophia's bridge to communication. They followed their usual route, past the community park where children younger than Sophia played under watchful nanny supervision. Max walked precisely at Sophia's left side, matching her pace, occasionally glancing up to check her expression. His presence beside her kept the whispered comments and curious stares at bay people were less likely to approach a child with a large German shepherd, even one as well behaved as Max. Near the 4-mile marker of their walk, a police cruiser rolled slowly alongside them. Sophia noticed that immediately her father had taught her situational awareness from an early age. She kept walking, her pace steady, Max's leash loose in her hand. The cruiser passed them, then abruptly pulled over and parked. 2 officers emerged, and Sophia felt the first flutter of unease. "Afternoon," said the older officer, his name badge reading Callaway. "You live around here?" His tone was casual, but his eyes were assessing, cataloging. "Yes, sir," Sophia answered, her voice soft but clear. Michael had taught her to be respectful to authorities, but also to maintain her dignity. "On Riverside Drive. My father and I moved here in June." Officer Callaway exchanged a glance with his partner, Officer Miller, a younger man with close-cropped hair and thin lips. "Your father home right now?" "He's away on business," Sophia replied, omitting details of Michael's deployment as she'd been instructed. "My aunt is staying with me." Miller stepped closer, eyeing Max, who remained perfectly still beside Sophia. "That's a big dog for a little girl. You sure you can control him?" "Max is trained, sir. He's not going to cause any trouble." Sophia's fingers tightened slightly on the leash, not from concern over Max's behavior, but from the growing tension she sensed in the interaction. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area," Callaway said, his hand resting casually near his holster. "You haven't seen anyone unusual around, have you?" "No, sir." Sophia took a small step backward, and Max moved with her, a synchronized movement born of countless hours together. "What's your name, kid?" Miller's voice had sharpened. "Sophia Hayes." She maintained eye contact despite her increasing discomfort. "My father is Commander Michael Hayes." Neither officer reacted to the military title. "Commander of what?" Miller asked, his tone skeptical. "He's in the Army, sir. Special Forces." Sophia didn't elaborate further, knowing her father's specific role was not for casual discussion. Callaway stepped closer. "You got some ID on you, Miss Hayes?" Sophia shook her head. "I'm 12, sir. I don't carry ID'd when I'm walking my dog." Miller snorted. Convenient. He moved closer, and for the first time Max issued a low, rumbling sound, not a growl, but a warning. "Control your dog," Miller snapped, his hand moving to his weapon. "He is controlled," Sophia said, her voice rising slightly with the first edge of fear. "He's just responding to your tone. If you step back, he'll relax." Instead of retreating, Miller took another step forward. "I said control your animal." Max didn't lunge, didn't bare his teeth, didn't even bark. He simply shifted his position slightly in front of Sophia, a protective stance that any trained handler would recognize as defensive, not aggressive. "He's attacking," Miller shouted, drawing his weapon in one fluid motion. "No." Sophia's scream tore through the air as she tried to pull Max back, but everything happened too quickly. The gunshot cracked the afternoon silence. Max yelped once, a sound Sophia had never heard from him before, and collapsed, blood immediately darkening his silver-gray coat. Sophia dropped to her knees beside him, her small hands pressing against the wound, her voice breaking as she pleaded, "Max, no, please, Max, stay with me." Blood seeped between her fingers as Max's intelligent eyes found hers, confusion and pain evident. Officer Callaway stood back, surveying the scene with clinical detachment. The dog was aggressive, Miller. He was going to attack, Miller insisted, holstering his weapon. "You saw it." "Well..." Sophia looked up at him through tears, her voice shaking with rage and grief. "He wasn't attacking, he was protecting me. You scared him." "Step away from the animal, miss," Callaway ordered, reaching for Sophia's arm. She jerked away from him. "Don't touch me. Help him. Please, you have to help him." From her porch across the street, Mrs. Whitman had witnessed everything. Her arthritic fingers fumbled with her phone as she dialed 911, but her voice was clear and firm as she reported what she'd seen. "Well, 2 police officers just shot a little girl's dog without provocation. The dog wasn't attacking. I saw the whole thing." As Sophia cradled Max's head in her lap, his breathing became labored. His tail thumped once against the pavement, a final effort to comfort her, and then stilled. The light in his eyes dimmed as Sophia's world collapsed into a singularity of grief. "He's dead," she whispered, her voice hollow with disbelief. "You killed him." She looked up at the officers, her young face transformed by a pain no child should know. "My father will make you pay for this." Miller laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Is that a threat, little girl?" "No," Sophia said, her tears falling onto Max's still form. "It's a promise." "Stand up." Officer Callaway's voice cut through Sophia's grief like a blade. When she didn't move, still cradling Max's head in her lap, he reached down and roughly pulled her to her feet. Max's blood stained her NASA t-shirt and jeans, smearing across her hands and forearms. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't leave him here, please." Miller stepped forward, his stance aggressive. "You're coming with us to the station to sort this out." Mrs. Whitman had descended from her porch and now approached, her elderly frame trembling with indignation. "You can't take that child without a parent or guardian present. Her dog was not attacking anyone. I saw everything." "Ma, this is police business," Callaway said dismissively. "Please return to your residence." "I've already called 911, Mrs. Whitman insisted, her cell phone clutched in her weathered hand. "And I've taken video. That dog was not aggressive." Miller's face flushed. "Interfering with police business is a crime, Ma. "So is shooting a child's dog without cause," she retorted, standing her ground despite her advanced age. "But I'm not leaving this child alone with you." More neighbors had emerged from their homes, drawn by the gunshot and commotion. Several had phones raised, recording the confrontation. Sophia stood motionless, shock settling over her like a heavy cloak. Her eyes never left Max's still form on the blood-stained pavement. "Fine," Callaway muttered, seeing the growing audience. "We're taking her to the station. You can follow if you want." He turned to Sophia, his voice falsely gentle now that they had witnesses. "Come on, kid, we need to get this sorted out." "I'm not leaving Max," Sophia said, her voice suddenly flat, emotionless. The shock was setting in fully now, her body's desperate attempt to protect her from the enormity of what had just happened. "Animal control will take care of the dog," Miller said impatiently. "Let's go." Mrs. Whitman stepped closer to Sophia, placing a protective arm around the child's shoulders. "We'll call her aunt." She said her aunt is home. "We'll contact her from the station," Callaway insisted, taking Sophia's arm and guiding her toward the patrol car. Protocol. In a daze, Sophia allowed herself to be led away from Max, looking back over her shoulder until his body was no longer visible. Inside the police cruiser, the world seemed to blur at the edges. The officers' voices were muffled, as if coming through water. She answered their questions mechanically, providing Aunt Jasmine's phone number and address when asked, but otherwise retreating deep inside herself where the pain couldn't reach. At the station, they placed her in a small room with bare walls and a table bolted to the floor. An officer she didn't recognize brought her a paper cup of water that she didn't touch. Time stretched and distorted. She stared at Max's blood drying on her hands, unwilling to wash it away. It was all she had left of him. The door burst open nearly 2 hours later, and Aunt Jasmine swept in like a force of nature, her professional composure barely containing her fury. At 35, Jasmine Hayes had built her reputation as one of the city's most formidable civil rights attorneys, and today that reputation preceded her. Sophia. Jasmine crossed the room in 3 strides, enfolding her niece in her arms. She pulled back to examine her, horror crossing her features at the blood-stained clothes. "Are you hurt? Did they hurt you?" Sophia shook her head, unable to form words. Jasmine turned to face the officers who had followed her into the room. "You held a minor for nearly 2 hours without proper notification to her guardian. You subjected her to questioning without appropriate representation. The dog you shot was a registered service animal, trained specifically for emotional support for a child who lost her mother to cancer." "The dog was aggressive," Miller began. "Save it," Jasmine snapped. "I've already reviewed video footage from 3 different neighbors. The animal was not aggressive, and you know it." She gathered Sophia's belongings. "We're leaving. And be advised, this is far from over." As they walked through the station, Sophia's vacant gaze caught the attention of a young officer standing by the front desk. His name badge read Parker. Unlike the others, his eyes held something like shame as he watched them pass. The ride home passed in silence, Sophia staring out the window, her body physically present but her mind somewhere else entirely. When they arrived home, Jasmine gently guided her to the bathroom. "Let's get you cleaned up, sweetheart," she said softly. Sophia looked down at her stained hands. "If I wash it away," she whispered, "it's like admitting he's really gone." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Sophia." She knelt before her niece. "Max will always be with you. Nothing can wash away what he meant to you." Later, after a shower she didn't remember taking and wearing clean clothes that brought no comfort, Sophia sat on her bed staring at Max's empty dog bed in the corner of her room. Jasmine sat beside her, making calls, her voice alternating between professional composure and barely controlled rage as she spoke with her legal colleagues, the animal rights advocates, police oversight committees, and finally through proper military channels attempting to reach Michael. That night, the nightmares began. Sophia woke screaming, reaching for Max, who had always been there to comfort her. Jasmine held her instead, but it wasn't the same. The nightmares came again and again, the sound of the gunshot, Max falling, the blood seeping through her fingers as his life slipped away. 3 days later, Michael Hayes stepped off a military transport plane, his face carved in granite. He had been extracted from his mission the moment Jasmine's message reached his commanding officers, the urgency of the situation apparent even through official channels. He had not spoken more than necessary words during the journey home, his mind consumed with a single purpose, reaching his daughter. When he walked through the door of their home, Sophia was sitting motionless on the living room couch, staring at nothing. She had not spoken since leaving the police station. The child psychologist Jasmine had called in diagnosed acute traumatic stress, recommending immediate therapy. "Sophia," Michael said softly. She turned, and when she saw him, something broke open in her face. She launched herself into his arms with a raw, wounded sound that was more animal than human. Michael lifted her easily, holding her against his chest as she sobbed for the first time since Max had died. "I couldn't save him, Daddy," she choked out between sobs. "I tried. I had my hands on the wound like you taught me, but I couldn't stop the bleeding." Michael's eyes met Jasmine's over Sophia's head, and his sister saw something there that made her blood run cold, a calm, calculated fury that she recognized from their childhood. It was the look he'd had the night he put 3 neighborhood boys in the hospital for attacking her when she was 14. "I shouldn't have let go of the leash," Sophia continued, her words tumbling out now that the dam had broken. "Maybe if I hadn't pulled back." "This wasn't your fault," Michael said. his voice gentle with her even as rage built behind his eyes. Max did exactly what he was supposed to do. He protected you. The policeman said Max was attacking, but he wasn't, Daddy. He was just standing in front of me. Michael carried her to the couch, sitting with her still in his arms. I know, baby, I believe you. At night, after Sophia had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep, Michael sat in the darkened kitchen with Jasmine. His sister pushed a thick folder across the table to him. Internal affairs cleared them both, she said without preamble. Justified use of force. They're claiming the dog lunged. Michael's expression didn't change. The videos? Apparently inconclusive. The system protects its own. Jasmine's voice was bitter with the knowledge of too many similar cases. I'm filing a civil suit, but that won't be enough, Michael finished. He stood, walking to the window to stare out at the night. My daughter can't sleep. She can't speak. That dog saved her life after Eleanor died, and these men took him from her without consequence. He turned back to Jasmine, his decision already made. The system has failed my daughter. I won't. Michael Hayes sat in his study reviewing the internal investigation report that Jasmine had obtained through her legal connections.